to the cloud. There we go. All right. Hi, everybody. Monica Richardson here. And we are here today. Let me just change this how I can see it so we see both of us. We're here today with Mike Danford. Mike is a pilot. And Mike was forced to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and a whole slew of, it's like a whole wheel of stuff that happened to Mike. And we're going to let Mike talk about what happened to you and what we need to change here.
Okay, Monica, it's good to see you again. It's been a long time since we've actually had a real good talk. To kind of summarize, to make this a little, more cohesive, I got a single DUI as an airline pilot, just off duty, and as a result of that, you are told by people that, your union and chief pilots that you got to go to rehab to fix it. Now, I just thought rehabs were places where you went to detox. I had no idea what was happening. Mm-hmm. And they literally, when you call them, by the way, because of my situation, the way you have to report stuff to the FAA, it was months after I got it. It's like 6 months after I got my DUI that I had to report this. And that was doing everything completely by the book. No, right. Nothing nefarious at all. Wasn't trying to hide anything. Like, you got to go to rehab today. I'm like, well, what do you mean today? For something that happened 6 months ago? Well, you're sick and you need treatment. A pilot told me this. I'm like, well, you don't even know me.
Yeah.
But make a long story short, I bullied him pretty hard. Said, I ain't going today, man. It's just not happening. So I pushed him into a couple of weeks from then. I showed up at this rehab clinic. I drove my own truck, parked it in the parking lot, walked in the front door. They had no idea who I was. Took a long time for it to figure it out. Hours. I was supposed to be met by somebody by the company. Nothing ever happened. All I know is I'm following people around. I'm not allowed to be by myself. I'm not allowed to go to the bathroom by myself. I mean, it's really weird. And by the end of that day, I started to realize, they had like a little AA meeting, I guess. I didn't know anything about AA, nothing about it. All I know, it's a volunteer thing, and it's kind of, the people do, and it does fine for them, great. But I didn't know it was associated with a rehab clinic or anything like that. I don't have any alcohol dependency problems. I never did. I don't have any health effects, anything. I just got a DWI. I knocked my drinking down a lot, and almost completely. And that was it. And so 6 months later, I find myself in this clinic. On the 3 hours into the first day, I'm talking to this doctor. Mm-hmm. He's a psychiatrist. He's the medical director of this place. It's a place in South Atlanta, in the armpit of South Atlanta. And he says, and when he said, Mike, I'm going to, after an short interview, he's like, I'm going to diagnose you with alcohol use disorder severe. I'm like, severe. I'm like, and if you don't agree with me, you're going to lose your medical and never fly again. You are entitled to a second opinion. That'll come from the doctor next door. He works for me, and his opinion doesn't matter. So do you agree with me or not? Yeah. That was my only answer. You're there as a volunteer. None of this becomes clear for months or even years as a volunteer, because he said, do you agree? And I had no choice. I mean, you're coerced. You're just flat coerced. And that night, I'm sleeping in these crazy apartments. Early into that, I came in the room one day and said, hey guys, there's a skunk or something out there. Everyone just started laughing. I'm like, Mike, do you know what pot smells like? I'm like, no. This place is just drug ridden, nasty. People getting their cars get broken into. Now I'm going off. I'm rambling now. But anyways, so I had to go to.
It's a story. It's okay.
I went to 40 days of this thing, and it was awful. It felt like brainwashing. I know now it was brainwashing. You come out, they got this litany of stuff, 90 meetings in 90 days. You got to get a sponsor.
Right.
You got to go to psychiatrists, psychologists. You got to do cognitive testing. My cognitive, and by the way, in that first couple of days, I did a physical, and it was the most thorough physical I've ever had in my life. And I was kind of curious because it's been years since I checked my cholesterol levels, and I was like, "No, that'd be interesting. I'll figure out what that is." They never talked to me about anything in the physical. Yeah. One until literally way out of that place, I got the false positive. I'm getting fired from my job. We'll get into that, I'm sure, later on.
Yeah.
But I petitioned for my records from the FAA, and I got them, and it had everything from this rehab clinic in there. And there was the entire physical. And what was remarkable was that there was nothing wrong
Right.
with me whatsoever. My cholesterol levels are even fine.
Right.
But rather than tell you, hey, Mike, you're in good health, they just gloss over it. Well, and what I saw them doing with other people that had problems, admittedly, they were using these like, look, you got these liver enzyme problems, you got these problems, and it's all because of drinking and you're at drugs or whatever. And, you're going to die without us helping you. But I had nothing wrong with me. So they just never brought them up. They required letters of impact from your family. Well, I got no family problems. So in the first couple of days, I called up my ex-wife. I'm like, they're going to ask for a letter of impact from you, and you don't have to do it, obviously, but it probably wouldn't hurt my case if you made some stuff up.
Oh God.
That's how disturbed I was.
Pathetic it was. Yeah.
It's how pathetic it was. And thank God it came to my senses like a week later. I'm like, oh God, just write whatever the hell you want. I don't care.
Right.
And she wrote me a very supportive letter. Never saw it. My kids wrote me very supportive letters. Never saw them.
Wow.
People every day in these classes, I got to get these letters of impact. Dad, you wrecked my life because blah, 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 blah. And I got very positive letters. I'm supposedly in the worst place I could be in my life. They're going to build me back up. You think they would bring these to your attention? Hey, look, your family support you. No, never saw them until I got my records from the FAA. Because there was nothing there, they just gloss over it. They just ignore you and talk to the people that have problems. And believe it or not, I now know people, and because I've been to practice prisoner of war school, I just laid low, gave them little bits. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic. Sure. Oh, good. We're glad you admit that. And then they go on to the next guy. Well, good. I got him off my case for a while. I thought if you just denied this all the way through, you'd never get your medical back. I mean, why would they give it to you? They've obviously made their minds up. They're in a position to shut you down. But other people actually denied it all the way through, and they just get their medical back too. It turns out it doesn't matter. People that are just absolute lost cases get their medical back. If you express suicidal ideology and the FAA gets wind of it, they sit you down. Okay, if you get a traumatic brain injury, automatic 2 years until they reevaluate you, make sure your brain's healing up or stays good for a long time. If you express suicidal ideology, as we know, suicidal pilots have wrecked lots of airplanes, taking a lot of people down with them, you're sent down for 5 or 10 years. Wow. Now I know guys that were admitted they were alcoholics and expressed suicidal ideology, 35 days of rehab and they're back, and they're back in business. Wow.
So you're saying, you've never said this to me before. So were some guys that were in the group, were they pilots?
Yeah, it's all pilots. I'm talking about
all pilots. Said, I'm not an alcoholic. I won this one era. I'm not. And they still pushed through. And
yeah, it doesn't matter what you do. You will get pushed through. You will get your medical back. And the rest of the world goes for 90 days. All the doctors, the dentists, the veterinarians, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, the business owners. This was an upscale place for, people that are doing well, business owners and stuff. They'll get pushed through in 90 days. All the pilots only have to go for 35, unless they determine you got to stay longer. But in 35 days, doesn't matter if you were suicidal or not, they just, oh, good, you're healed and and back to work you go. It just doesn't matter. It's just a 100% scam.
That's a long time, Mike. Like 3 months. Most of these guys have, their wives or they're married or they got kids or family.
Oh, they don't care. Like I said, if something happens, like security gets called in a hotel on a layover, and they say we have a drunk pilot causing problems, and he gets back to the chief pilot's office, it doesn't matter what the circumstances were behind it. You're likely going to be met by chief pilots and representatives from the HIMS program. And they're going to escort you straight to a rehab clinic.
So let's tell everybody
for a 4-day evaluation. That's what I went for, is a 4-day evaluation. On day one, they said, you're sick, and do you accept my thing, or it doesn't matter what the other guy says. And I said, yes. If I accept this, do we start treatment tomorrow? And I figured that'd get me out of 3 days of this mess. And they said, yeah, we can. If you admit it, then we'll go ahead and admit you now. And then, but that didn't matter. Delta still paid for the $5,000 4-day thing, and I stayed a full stint.
Wow.
It's just a scam. It's just, by the way, I recently know a guy, another pilot, to give you an idea of what this is like, and in these evaluations, which, by the way, this doctor that runs this clinic is evaluating me. If he admits me for treatment, he's the one making money.
Wait, it's his clinic. Say that again.
The person doing the evaluation is the one in charge of the clinic I get sent to.
Oh, yeah.
So a guy is a designated driver. gets pulled over at 2 a.m. A car full of his drunk pilot buddies. And he
So,
like, get up.
hold on a second. I got a plane that was way too loud. I'm gonna close my window, but okay, go ahead.
So he gets pulled over, for whatever reason. Maybe he's driving a little too fast or something. He said, I haven't been drinking, but we'll get out and do these field sobriety tests. Well, you flunked this field sobriety test. We're going to breathalyze you. And he says, I refuse that. I want you to draw blood. All right. So they drag him off. They draw blood. He has to report this to his company. Their company had different reporting structures. So he had to report this the next day, and he did. And they sent him off to a rehab clinic for an evaluation. He's at the evaluation. They're like, yeah, you have alcohol problems just based on an interview, how much he's drinking, patterns, this, that. And I talk,
Right.
and he went through rehab again, 35 days, right? A month.
Right.
On week 4, beginning of week 4, while he's there, the results from the blood test come back. Guess what his blood alcohol content was?
What?
0.
Oh my God.
He hadn't been drinking.
Wow.
Now he's a full-on member of the HIMS program for life.
So is this a new guy that's in the?
Yeah, I talked to him about a month ago. I've been talking to people for years now, and I hear, and that's not even the most shocking story I've got.
Right.
I've got much more shocking stories than that. People that didn't even drink are stuck in this program, forced to AA, forced to do all this neurocognitive testing to the tunes of, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow. So does a guy like get a lawyer? I mean, I'm stunned about this one because that's a new story.
It doesn't matter. You try to, so in my case, so you go through this program, you're not allowed to drink again for life, regardless. So be it. So, but how they monitor
on your own
this,
time. Let's paint this picture though, right? For the people who are listening, ladies and gentlemen out there in the internet land, that Mike here got a DUI because you were breaking up with your marriage, right? And you were upset. You were
no, a girlfriend. Actually, it
Girlfriend.
wasn't. I broke up
All right.
with her, and my habits had changed. For several years, I was living downtown. I could just go drinking and walk home.
right.
And then literally days after I moved out of that place, I went drinking. I had to drive there like an idiot. I had met up with someone who had connections behind the bar and drank a lot more. I don't even remember leaving the bar. I mean, I was screwed up and it was dumb. But my habits had
But a
completely
mistake
changed.
is not a problem. A person, all right, people who have a drinking problem, like many people make a mistake. Okay, but so you do that, and so I was just so blown away by the guy who didn't even his blood alcohol level was like 0. So what we're saying is that, guys, that these people get sent, everybody that you're talking about, even if these guys are not flying a plane and drinking like Denzel Washington in that.
And by the way, if you're flying a plane dead drunk and get busted, exact same thing.
Compared to a guy who doesn't ever drink and fly, but he drank on his own time and he got a DUI.
Same 35 days.
So is there some kind of corruption with the money? You know how with the rehab with Florida and California, we have that kickback in all your sort of investigations, because it's been years now, right? That you've been going through this. Did you ever see a link that there could be some, people getting money in an inappropriate way or anything like that?
It's got to be. First of all, these clinics love us pilots showing up because and honestly, I would call that an expert opinion now, because I have interviewed, I don't even know how many people, but I've talked to, scads and scads of people that have got stuck into this. I'm guessing 70 to 80% of the pilots don't even come close to meeting. Let me rephrase that. Probably more than that. Let's just say 80% of the pilots clearly don't meet any American Psychiatric Association definition of alcohol use disorder. That part is just purely fabricated. That way insurance will pay for it. Now the FAA has got different criteria. So you're going to be stuck because of the FAA's program, but there's no reason for all the stuff that the companies do to you. In my case, I was told that I'd need an evaluation. So I got one.
Right.
But I didn't know anything about HIMS. I wasn't HIMS certified and all that. And I submitted all that to the FAA. And the FAA still literally just wouldn't answer the phone for my doctor that was not a HIMS AME. While I was in rehab, they sent me a letter saying, oh, okay, we see you took this course. they recommend you do an 8-hour online course, submit that, and we'll probably give your medical back. I never even knew about that. By now, I've already been through rehab.
So can you tell people what your medical is? I know what it is now, but explain to the people who are listening when you say,
oh, okay,
in order to back, like what are the hoops that a pilot has to jump through?
In order to fly professionally, you need a professional license. The license is good for life. You never have to renew it. It's good forever, but you have to get a medical depending on what level you fly at. If you fly as a captain for a Part 121, that's a scheduled airline, you have to get a medical every 6 months. If you're a first officer flying internationally, you have to get a medical every 6 months. If you're a first officer flying domestically, you only have to get a medical once a year. But you have to have a medical and a license to fly professionally. So what is in jeopardy when this happens to you is your medical, not your license. Now, if you get caught flying drinking, they'll pull your licenses as well, and you got to get them back. That's another wicket, and that's another issue. And quite frankly, it's, I would say, fairly legitimate. But the way they pull your medical is, and they bounce around a lot. It is under the guise of what they call, it's a special issuance. If you have something wrong with you medically, then it's a complicated thing like heart disease, diabetes,
or a tremor. Remember how Scott had a tremor? It was not even, you know.
Yeah, but tremors. You know, there are pilots flying with MS. Multiple sclerosis presents itself in a way that episodes come on slowly.
Right.
And so it isn't so much the medical issue. They want to make sure that you are mentally fit enough to pull yourself from flying. You know, if you know an episode's coming on.
So can you tell us about how long have you been flying? When did you start flying? And what were you?
In my case, I've been flying for 18 years for Delta Airlines, professionally for about 30 years.
Wow.
And in my case, I went through this whole wicket. I got my medical back. I mean, it was chop block easy. I mean, just do what they say, get it back.
Right.
But they monitor this. They won't let you drink for life. And the way they enforce that is with non-FDA approved, not well vetted, junk science by anybody I've talked with, any science credentials whatsoever. Things called PEth tests, ETG tests. These things are useful tools, but the companies use these as truth serum, as James Bond truth serum. Well, the test came out positive, you've been drinking. In this case, I had to test a random test, which I was compelled to take, no big deal. Came back positive. I'm like, well, guys, I haven't been drinking. Surely we can look into this. Nope, test positive. So no problem if you've relapsed, by the way. That's not a big deal. Back to rehab you go. You go back to rehab and they send you back out into the field.
Well, so if you would have lied and said, like, played along with them.
And in fact, I was even told by my chief pilot and by union representatives, Mike, even if you didn't drink, just go to rehab. I mean, it's a year of getting.
I guess they've never been to rehab.
Yes, that's true. And they're like, it's a year of not flying, but you're getting paid the whole time. You spend 3 months at the clinic, but you get weekends off and stuff. It won't be that bad. Just go ahead and admit it, and you'll get your job back. It was never in jeopardy. But because I stood up for myself, I got fired. You got to go to arbitration to resolve this, and arbitration is nothing other than a corporate compromise. It was bad for the company and bad for the union for me to prove this test was bad. And this test is proven bad. Don't take my word for it. I have found 3 cases of people, 1 pilot and 2 child custody cases. 1, by the way, you don't know about. We haven't talked about it yet. Of people getting 2 of these tests back to back on the same day.
Wow.
And 1 is positive, 1 is negative.
What kind of lab is doing the test? I mean, I know, but can you go ahead?
There's 1 lab in the entire nation.
What?
Everyone subjected this goes to. And it's called the USDTL. In fact, in one of these child custody cases, they had two PEth tests in one day. I think 20 minutes apart. And 1 is positive, 1 negative. Goes to the same lab, got processed. 1's positive, 1's negative. They don't even have a mechanism to check to see if that happens. He admitted that under oath.
Where's the lab at again?
It's in Des Plaines, Illinois, in the Chicago area. By the way, something else we haven't talked about is you ought to Google a thing called mother risk. 1 word, MOTHERISK.
Okay.
Mother risk was this program started in Canada where they're checking mothers, you know, from admittedly not great backgrounds for alcohol use
Right.
in order to take their kids if they, unnecessarily expose their unborn child to alcohol, prenatal alcohol exposure. And the name of that lab was MDTL, Mother Risk Drug Testing Laboratories. And it was causing lots of mothers to lose their kids when they hadn't been drinking because of false positives.
Wow.
That was hair-based ETG. And it was just proven junk, and the lab got shut down and everything like that. It's a big scandal, Mother Risk scandal in Canada. And ironically, the lab in the US is called USDTL, and it's just as fraught with false positives as costing doctors their careers. Suicides have been attributed to this. Like me,
who owns it?
What's that?
Who owns it?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a medium-sized company. It's not publicly traded, as far as I know. It's about between 50 and 100 employees. All the employees that work there, you go onto Glassdoor or Glass Ceiling, stuff like that, and look at reviews from people that have worked there. Not a good place to work. Wow. Universally bad reviews. Lots of high turnover. I mean, they admit right there on these reviews. I mean, they're not incredibly scientific or anything, but that internally SOP hadn't followed, stuff like that. But in the case of all these false positives from pilots and doctors and lawyers and dentists and organ recipients. Yeah. I know a guy that damn near died because he got a false positive PET test. And when I talk about all these other people that have them, I'm not a bleeding heart that just trusts them. I evaluate these tests. I now know how, not that I want to. They publish, expected and fairly credible half-life values of this. And if you have a certain level, it should stay positive for so many days. Right. They publish the standard. In my case, that it just didn't work. There's no way I would, I got follow-on tests immediately when I found out about it. They were all negative, and those numbers don't work.
So who said that doesn't matter? Who said the second one? Who?
The company.
So Delta.
A pilot evaluates this. There's no medical review.
What, one pilot who works at Delta?
Yes.
Made that decision about your career?
Yes.
Of 30 years.
Jim Graham.
What position is he?
At the time, he was senior vice president of flight operations.
Jim Graham. I'm just going to write a little notes.
Yeah, he now is. Well, actually, yeah, I think he was the senior vice president. Replaced Dixon. Dixon now runs the FAA. He was the chief pilot before him. He moved into his slot. Graham moved into Dixon's slot, and then Graham, because of some other problems, he was involved in a number of lawsuits. Then became the CEO of Endeavor Airlines, a little commuter.
So let's talk about HIMS. This is such a shit. Every time we talk, we've been talking for a couple of years now, like maybe longer.
It's been probably close to 3 years now, at least.
Yeah, I think so. HIMS is the Human Intervention Motivational Study. Let's talk about the HIMS program, the AA-based 1970s HIMS program that's still in charge. Go ahead, please.
So the special issuances, people have alcoholism. Back in the days, that was a thing. It no longer is, according to the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, the American Psychiatric Association uses on version 5. But people would have that, and they're like, well, can we let them back into the cockpit or not? And sometimes it would, sometimes it wouldn't. The FAA is risk adverse. They're like, we don't know what to do. They just do nothing, and you just sit in limbo. Wow. So the union came up with this program. Well, we'll put everybody through this one program, and it'll work. We're sure of it. and sure enough, it was working. Someone's diagnosed an alcoholic, and not diagnosed. The FAA just calls them one. Right,
you're labeled it. Right.
And now you go through this rehab, and it turns out, the general, as you know, what is AA's relapse rate? 95%.
Yeah, it's really high. Yeah, 95%.
Well, guess what the relapse rate is among pilots?
Oh, 0, right?
Not 0, but 10%.
Yeah, they all.
Are we that much more amazing that we are cured by this and no one else is? Or maybe, like I said, 70-80% don't meet alcoholic criteria.
Right.
Can a non-alcoholic quit drinking? Yes.
So, you brought up, so we just did this podcast, me and this other ex-stepper guy, Bobby Cirillo, on YouTube, but you can check it out. And we're talking about, he said, who diagnosed me? Who diagnosed me, right? And you just said it, and it's kind of, I see the link now here, that's insanity. So you usually get diagnosed for, something like this by a doctor.
Yeah,
but
usually.
You got diagnosed by like a stepper?
The decision was made by Chief Pilot. It's backed up by
A
the guys that
pilot,
run,
a pilot diagnosed you
basically, yes.
with alcohol use disorder. He's a doctor and he's practicing
Well,
medicine.
the guy who made that all a statement was a doctor, but he, like I said, but he came up with a false diagnosis. I did not meet, in order to meet alcohol use disorder severe, according to the DSM-5, there are 11 criteria. You got to meet 6 or more of them.
Yeah, and you didn't.
I met one.
Yeah.
One criteria is, have you ever, is drinking ever caused a problem? Well, yeah, I drank and it caused a problem.
Right.
But that was it.
Right.
1 out of 6 does not an alcoholic make, or an alcohol use disorder case make. In order to be mild, you have to meet 2 or more. And I didn't even meet 2.
Let's explain this to, the general public out there of what is HIMS, like when did it get created and who is it created by, who's running it?
And that becomes a little nebulous. So they came up with a study and said, well, if we send guys to rehab for 35 days, they're going to no longer be a problem. So just everyone buys off on it. And like I said, the reason why the relapse rate is so low is they force guys through this that aren't alcoholics. They just quit drinking.
Right.
Because we have to keep flying, and you just quit. That's what I did.
And they don't want to lose their job. So they did. So
yeah.
You know what?
And
they're motivated because they're going to lose their job that they love flying. I mean, it's my understanding with pilots and these guys, you guys love to fly, you love to work.
But everyone loves their job. And the thing is, as anybody, a real addiction studied or knowledgeable person knows, you can't scare an addict.
Mm-hmm.
What does AA say all these addiction problems lead to? Death. They all right? Isn't that part of the AA tenet?
Oh yeah, death, institution, insane asylum, and prison.
Well, it leads to death. Continued usage leads to death, period. Right. And so I lost my train of thought right there.
Well, maybe because I asked you, I was thinking about the label, who diagnosed you, and who created the HIMS program, which we know are AA guys. So I know one guy who was involved in it in the 1970s. He worked for Pan American in the baggage.
And that's okay.
So motivation, I think you were talking about, right? Motivation.
Yeah. So the HIMS program is this study, and it says you got to do these certain wickets. So each company sets up their own HIMS program. There's no centralized control of this. Each company has their own. But the thing, in terms of the FAA, which is another whole battle, if you just see these certain doctors and they say you're good, the FAA just signs off on it. They don't really care. They're administrative. They're purely administrative.
Okay.
This is an administrative process. See this doctor. If he gives you a passing score, you're good. So now there's a trusted list. So it's fairly streamlined, and now everybody get back to work. And if you do what they say, lying or not, you'll get back to work. Nobody cares.
But who is that doctor? Is that a psychiatrist that most of the guys that I've talked to, they have to pay him like $2,500 for an hour?
Oh no, there's you got to see 2 of those and then have a doctor. Oh, by the way, yeah. So your HIMS team consists of your treating physician. That's your AME, your aviation medical examiner. He's a doctor. By the way, he's not an addictionologist. He's not a toxicologist that interprets these tests. Then he's the only guy that looks at them. He's nothing. In fact, I know one HIMS certified AME that's an ophthalmologist. It's an administrative process to become an AME. And then to become a HIMS AME is just more of an administrative process.
Was he an ophthalmologist that got into trouble? And so he played the game and now he's going to be doctor?
No, he's just a doctor. It's easy money.
Oh, okay.
Instead of charging $200 for a physical, now we can charge $2,000.
Wait, let's call the HIMS program right now. Hello, this is Monica calling from YouTube. No.
There's no centralized control. It's set up by the companies. So the company forces the doctor you go to, forces a psychiatrist you got to see, forces a psychologist you got to see. It is so widespread, rampant, corrupt. It's hard to wrap your mind around, and it's hard to summarize in a podcast. But they're all just making money hand over fist. These are easy cases. 80% of us just do what we're said. We'll lie about it to get through. So it's just easy money. They don't have to psychiatrate. They don't have to psychologate. They don't have to medicate. These doctors are just have people show up and sign off on them, and they make wicked.
Gravy train, right? Would you say it's a gravy train?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the name of the rehab? Are we going to talk about the name of the rehab?
Oh, the one I went to, all the companies have their favorite places. In fact, you'll find the Delta logo on the Talbot Recovery Center website. We're such a favored customer.
How much is it a month?
Oh, geez, it's about $1,000 a day.
So it's 30K.
Yeah.
Plus, right? Plus the evaluation. But now remember that story?
And if you relapse, Delta has another favorite place they like to send you is even worse. And worse, called MAR, Metro Atlanta Rehab and Recovery, or something like that.
Yeah.
One of our chief pilots is on the board of directors. Patrick, his name will come to me. I can't think of one reasonable reason a pilot would be on a board of directors of a rehab center.
What, is he still a pilot?
Oh yeah. Well, no, he's a chief pilot, so he's a pilot that doesn't like to fly airplanes.
Do you know one of the things that maybe this is why? So Russell Brand, at first I didn't really like him because he's a stepper. He's an AA guy. And then when the pandemic happened, he started asking a lot of questions. He just didn't like what was going on, and he began actually his critical thinking woke up, and he started asking all these critical questions. And I started watching him, and he exposed, he would find real news, and he exposed that one of the big guys from Big Pharma, it might have been Pfizer or whatever, was on the board of CNN. So it's really hard to be to be transparent and not, what's the word? Fair, not prejudiced,
or unbiased.
Unbiased, that's the word I'm looking for. If you're on the board of Pfizer, per se, if that's what it was, and you're on the board of CNN, that you're really gonna, talk, honestly about it. So when you see this, AA in New York now has judges. They've had judges on their board for a long time, right? So they want that, but this part here, wow, it's such a bad story, because you see all of these guys' lives being ruined. And when the German pilot he drove into the mountain.
Yep.
My film was finished, and I remember watching that, and I remember actually watching on the CNN. I don't watch anymore, but they had all the 6 of them up there, and I was like, "That's a stepper. That's a stepper face. That's a stepper." And
there's certain parlance you get to learn, and you can tell who is.
Yeah, they have this thing here,
Yeah.
But even after 30 years sober, they all start to, even I have people that are still I'm friends with, and I like them as people. But so when I saw him in that story, and I'm like, Germany, what happened to him? And you know where they sent him? He fucking sent him to Prescott, Arizona, stepper city of whatever, of the Southwest. And I could just see him saying, "You think I'm powerless? Watch me. I'll show you how powerless I am as I fly a giant plane filled with people into a mountain. I ain't powerless." Let's talk about that. The idea of implanting in a pilot that he's powerless. You guys, you talked about this maybe the first time I interviewed you. You want to talk about that, of some of the concepts that how did you sit through meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and the TSM, the 12-step facility? How'd you sit through that? You were military, right? Were you in the Navy?
Well, I'm a professional at how to defuse a situation to keep the heat off of me. If you wind up a prisoner of war, it's assumed you're going to give up secrets. People can beat them out of you. That's never been questioned.
Yeah.
But what they train people to do is to resist to the utmost of their ability. Mm-hmm. That's what we're trained to do. You just got to resist as much as you can, but you got to stay alive. That's the goal. Well, in order to stay alive, I had to keep these people off my back, not looking at me. And quite frankly, no one there at that place remembers me. I just stayed under the radar, and these little group therapy things, almost everybody had a big breakdown, and most of the pilots don't. They just sit quietly in the back, and we don't, I've never said a word at an AA meeting. I've had to go to hundreds.
Wow.
I know you okay.
Will you talk
about shut up and
wow, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, so what about, remember you were talking about things that were being shared that were inappropriate across lines of, so say that I worked at Sony, movie studio, and I had a private issue that I went and dealt with. But can you imagine if they shared my medical records with the people that I worked with? Talk about that aspect.
Well, first of all, once you're in a HIMS program, the company, this is not legal. It just happens. I know a pilot who's filed a complaint against a doctor is forced to see that doctor. Can't change doctors. The FAA doesn't care if she changes, but the company does because they want to go to the doctor that they have on the payroll.
Wait a second. The Delta is deciding that?
Yes.
Delta. So isn't
under threat of losing your job.
Couldn't you sue Delta?
No, because it's a labor dispute. You're stuck with an arbitration.
Oh, wow. So
by the way, my arbitration decision is online. You can read it. And I've had lots of lawyers read it, and they're just like, well, the guy just threw all logic aside, all science aside, and just made up his mind. And he didn't. It was just a rigged thing. Arbitrations are not, it's bad for the company and it's bad for the union for me to prove these tests are bad. So I stood no chance ever.
Wow.
So they decide that you're forced to go to these meetings that are not anonymous. Everyone knows you're in the HIMS program because you're doing things that are obvious.
This is Mike Pilot. Kevin just came. I want you to say hi to Kevin. Hey, Kevin, and this is Mike.
Hi, Mike. Hi.
Good to see you again. How you doing, sir?
I'm jealous of your hair.
He's got good hair, hasn't he?
He's got great
He's got a great beard.
Yeah.
It turned gray, but it didn't turn loose. Yeah.
Pleasure. I'll leave you
Good
guys.
to see you again.
Take care, man.
Yeah, I wanted you to meet him. His
Take care.
story is insane, Kevin. This, and each time I hear it, Mike, like we met in person, you were with your girlfriend out at the pier in Malibu, and then we did these phone interviews, and then we flew out to Florida where you flew down, and
and you've referred people to me, and I've referred people to you. We've networked a lot in the last, and we're making progress. The FAA has helped, and it used to be, and this is how this program got so big and powerful. It takes like 10 to 20 years, at least 10 years to get qualified to go to a major airline. 10 years of scrapping, scrimping. I mean, just substandard everything to get there. It takes a long time. Pilots are used to spending years to do something. So in the past, when you got in the HIMS program, it was for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then you were cut loose again. Then everything goes back to normal.
Wow.
So guys, like 3 years, I can do it. And that's what it was when I got into it. But about a year ago, the FAA goes, man, well, it turns out, okay, here's a good,
let's hear how did it go from 3 to 5 to forever?
Because of AA.
Wow.
So it turns out, do you know why the program was 3 years?
No.
It turns out there's very solid, accepted scientific papers out there showing that if you were in a forced situation to prevent you from drinking, and you go 3 years without drinking, guess what your odds are of becoming an alcoholic again are? The exact same as the general public, about 10%. About 10% of the public is considered alcoholic if you believe in it. So, but if you go 3 years without drinking, your odds of developing any kind of drinking characteristics that cause problems are about 10%. So you're effectively cured, right? Or at least been reset because mental conditioning works. So it was for 3 years, and the program never had problems. But AA is involved. If you're an alcoholic, how long are you an alcoholic for?
Forever.
So the NTSB, who is the oversight agency for the medical arm of the FAA, says, no, wait a minute.
NTSB. Okay.
National Transportation Safety Board oversees in other words, if you have a medical issue with the FAA and you disagree with it, you appeal it to the NTSB. They're the oversight agency, just the way it's been set up. It's fine. Right. So anyways, the NTSB is going, now guys, you keep telling us that you're an alcoholic forever, but you only monitor them for 3 years. And the FAA is like, so they just, and after and it took like 13 years, and finally the FAA is getting pressure from the NTSB. So the FAA is like, okay, fine, we'll monitor them for life.
Oh no. So is the NTSB run by a stepper? Must be.
Well, no, you got to admit there's just a dichotomy in the logic.
Oh, that's awful.
So it's because of the AA stuff. I mean, they had a reasonable workable program. So now what are the problems with making this go for life? First of all, the number of HIMS AMEs. Usually it's a 3-year window. They get 3 years worth of clients and it just moves along, right?
Right.
But remember, you don't fall out the end anymore. So now the bucket just fills up. There's not enough HIMS AMEs to cover if nobody gets out of it. There's not. So, and they're like, well, we can't test them every month of their life forever. So we'll just go to test them 4 times a year. And we're going to do that with, PET testing, because it's good for about 3 months. So we'll just use PET testing at the exact same time. By the way, in my case,
Wow.
I had follow-on evidence and I submitted this without expert review. I submitted it completely raw to the FAA and said, I didn't drink and here's my proof. And guess what the FAA said?
What?
Looks like you didn't drink to us and gave me my medical back.
Right. Okay. So what happens next?
Well, I got fired. I'm just out. I lost the arbitration. You can't appeal arbitration effectively at all.
Really?
It broke me. I spent everything I had. Been years without a job, without any medical or health insurance.
I'm so sorry.
And I spent my everything I had because I had to get my own lawyers because the union just said, you're going to lose. And they were right. Should have listened, I guess.
So 30 years of flying. I know what you're doing now. So what are you doing for work now?
Well, right now I'm ferrying airplanes. I fly jumpers. I'm just whatever I can to get along. Those 3 years, it took 3 years to go to arbitration. During those 3 years, I didn't go seek a real job because I should have won. There's no doubt I should have won. And I'd be going back. And I didn't want someone to spend a lot of money on a typewriter or something for me and just to quit and leave them, and leave them like that. So I just made those 3 years renovating hotels, working with my son, getting along. And then when I lost arbitration, I started to, they're back. Yeah, my iPad power is getting low.
Oh, how much more time you got?
I don't know. It's got 10%. But
okay. You know what? Yeah.
Oh,
this is your power. You mean you got to plug in?
Yeah.
Okay, plug it in. Don't worry. It really was good there. You know what I think though? I want to talk for another, make this a full hour, maybe another 10 minutes or something.
Sure.
I think we should talk again because this has really been.
Well, even since we have talked much, the scope of this is just gone nuts. These false positives, for example, guess where the vast majority of them all go to people exactly like me, which is we have resisted this program.
Who's saying that?
What's that?
Who's saying that you've resisted the program?
Well, I said that their test was wrong and I didn't drink. I refused to capitulate and just go back to treatment and admit that this program is just doing so much for me. I'm like, it's not doing anything for me. It's hurt me. People that resist I didn't resist a lot in treatment because I didn't think I could get by with it. But I know guys that did, and a huge amount of them wind up with a false positive. I think it's actually directed. They know the mechanism by which it's happening and they can create it. And when that came to light, and I brought it all to light, they're using that test less now, right? And they're using whole blood. Well, we just had another pilot who resisted all the way through treatment. I mean, hardcore. He was well known to just fuck this, but he got his medical back, went to flying, had to do a whole blood PET test, came back positive, said I haven't been drinking. I tried to get my DNA checked. I just couldn't get it done. It's ridiculous, but you just can't. And there's hundreds of cases like that with these tests and these dumb labs. They force people not to, but he pitched a big enough fit, partially because there's books out there written by friends of mine and I network enough that people know about it.
Oh, is this the guy that I know? Is this the guy?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, but he had his whole blood test DNA check, not his DNA. So he's going to win that case because that gets to go to court. Because that goes to court.
Yeah. Wow. And okay. So where can people find us? Do you have is there,
I bet everybody personally, most people find me just Googling when they get a false positive. You start Googling false positive PET test, you're going to find me.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I get calls from nurses, lawyers, doctors, dentists.
PETH? Is that a PET test?
PET. It's a acronym for phosphatidylethanol.
There's a lot of false tests in COVID.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, even somebody I know was really close to me, got a little sick and then they tested negative and then they, 5 days later and they still weren't getting better and tested negative again a week later. And then they weren't getting better. And I was like, maybe you got pneumonia, whatever. And then finally went to a different place and it tested positive and in fact was COVID and of course got the monoclonal, antibodies and other stuff and it's fine. But the false testing, is the testing expensive? I mean, is somebody making a lot of money like in the rehabs where there's a lot of money?
Well, there's actually for the airlines a preferred company and it's called Choice Labs run by Michelle Gable, who is a recovering drug addict. certified patient care technician. She's not even a LPN.
Whoa, Choice Labs. And what's her name again?
Michelle Gable.
Wow.
And we actually have documents from the FAA showing where the FAA has called and asked her advice on these tests. We also have, she has admitted that she has personally seen false negatives. And she had also admitted she created a false positive.
Whoa. You know what? This is so bad. Do you know the story? There's a show on Netflix. I watched it about these two or three women that were working on these murder cases, and they were doing all the testing, and they were actually stealing, you know, I guess when they arrest drug addicts and they take their drugs and they get put into, they put into, I'm sorry, along with all the, not the witnesses stuff. I'm sorry. And my brain is not, it's kind of done for the night, but
Yeah.
well, with all the evidence, sorry. So it's all with all the evidence. So these girls, weren't girls, they were in their 20s, they were stealing the drugs, and they were screwing with the tests. And it was a lab. So they were working in two different labs, and a documentary got made, and these guys eventually got freed. So they got exposed and they went to prison for it. But it was one of those, you're just sitting there going, holy crap. Like,
By the way, it's happened in the DOT drug testing program for Delta Airlines before. I think it was called First Labs. Some pilots pop positive on DOT random tests.
That sounds familiar. Yeah, First Labs. That sounds.
Yep.
I don't know why that sounds familiar.
All these labs are just junk. I mean, it's junk science. In the case of the USDTL, they admit under oath that they have all these collection criteria. You got to dry it so long, you got to, and you can't bag it up before you got to put desk impacts. That they don't adhere to any. They don't care if the collector does any of the procedures correctly, and they don't check. That is a requirement for CLIA certification, which they brag about. We have complained to CLIA and enforcement agencies, and they don't care. To the tune of, we hired lawyers hired for $25,000 to formally complain. I mean, well researched, well written. This is not, an online. We're complaining. This is a very well thought out, legally minded, worded, and it all makes sense. And they just respond, "Yeah, we don't see a problem."
I mean, don't you think, we have Larry, he went off to do some other work right now, but that this really is a class action lawsuit because
it's so hard to do, but yes, it is.
Well, it was hard to sue the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts, right? It was.
Yeah, I think it eventually will gel. Like I said, because it went to Lifetime, guys are now starting to complain. And all these bad diagnoses, Talbot has been sued in the past for false imprisonment.
Really?
And it's successfully.
Wow. Now, remember the story, the Barry Hazel story that he won up in the north where he sued, but he sued the rehab, he sued the probation officer, and he sued the state of California, and he won, was it like 1.8 million or something like that? It took 7 years to get the money. But he had to be willing to go back to jail, which he did for like under 90 days. And he said he did this. I'm going to show this to everybody. It's a yellow pad. And he used that 90 days to write the story down blow by blow. And he said that really helped him because it was really, nobody could refute it, right? I do think that this is definitely going to be a class action lawsuit. And I hope
it will eventually. And ugh.
But
these guys know they're doing wrong. They know they are.
Who's doing the most wrong, Mike? Who's doing the most wrong of all these spheres of people, whether it's HIMS or Delta or the lab?
Quite frankly, it's the major airlines are the biggest offenders. They're the ones that are weaponizing this. The other guys are just on a gravy train. But the major airlines have created this, and by and large have quite overtly weaponized it. The road to hell is paved. Is paved with good intentions.
I told you I called HIMS a couple of times. And of course they answer.
I said it's not centrally. They have no power.
No, but I got to tell you, calling them as a next stepper, right, and knowing all this stuff, and I was talking to them and confronting them on what they were doing, and it's pretty wild. They were like so brainwashed.
Oh yeah.
Stupid and like they really AA members have a level of arrogance that is unsurpassed that I have yet to see with another.
Well, and that's, and here's another little tidbit to kind of put it in perspective. Now that you've heard more about it, is management has weaponized it, but it's enforced by the steppers that run it. And they're disconnected. They're so disconnected they can't see that it's weaponized.
Right.
So it's a perfect storm, for a victim like me that just, you're just stuck in it. But the guys that really have problems still have problems. They're just, now they're running around wrecking people's lives, because every time they get somebody into this program, they've saved another life. So they get that little, what is that, dopamine rush? They get another little pump of dopamine, like, yeah, I saved another life because I got somebody into this.
This is so bad.
And that's the brainwashing AA's done to them.
Well,
so everybody's culpable. I mean, in a big way. AA is very culpable because of the brainwashing aspect of it, and they suck these guys in that have real problems. And now they just turn around and they quit drinking and now wreck lives. They don't need the endorphin hit or the dopamine hit from alcohol, because now they get to save lives. They just transferred the same mal behavior to something else.
Can I ask you a stupid question?
What?
Have you ever called Alcoholics Anonymous, like World Service, and told them that what they've done to you and what they're doing to pilots, and that they need to tell Delta Airlines to stop using Alcoholics Anonymous to beat everybody?
No, I haven't. That's something I probably ought to do. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk off of YouTube. We talk about that strategy because we've written another. Anyway, it's nuts. It's, it doesn't ever get nuts when I talk to you.
It gets nuttier. It's just, the scope is just insane. I'm just not paranoid enough to have ever put this together without having gone through it.
Wow.
And every time I turn on, I'm like, surely common sense will prevail eventually, and not even close.
Is there anything else like that in the world?
Oh yeah, the market's not cornered on this. It's all over the place, but this is the one I'm familiar with. But it's there.
Yeah, well, you know what? When I said that, I was thinking about nurses that have contacted me.
Oh, do you know why the nurses have these programs and the doctors and the lawyers? Because HIMS is so successful that they're emulating it. So a lot of their problems are our fault, because, pilots are hired in airlines for compulsive tendencies. That is, you follow orders without asking why. That's what they want. Really? Real pilots are antisocial. We have a problem with authority. We don't believe in gravity. Newton can go screw himself. Sorry, Ricketts, or I'm going to defy gravity. I'll show you. Real pilots are antisocial, but airline pilots are hired for compulsive characteristics. So they have a hard time sorting out, getting people that are, good enough pilots, but are also compulsive. And some of us slip through the cracks, and we're the ones with all the false positives and had this program wreck our lives.
I was so naive when I first met my first pilot. I drove up to, where was it?
Was that Brent?
What's that?
Is that Brent? That's
no,
how I found you, was a podcast you did with
Brent Wyrock, who disappeared from the planet. Have you ever reconnected with him?
I never did.
So he contacted me on Facebook like a year ago and asked me to take, well, it was before COVID. And he said they destroyed him, and he wanted me to take everything off social media about him, which I did whatever I could, delete it.
Well, that's why I was hesitant to use his name. And I respect that, because I totally get it.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
I can't take this out of here, but I don't think anybody will understand what I said anyway, because I said it so fast, right? But it was another pilot who was just flying for joy. He just did it for fun. And he was a doctor. And eventually things got bad for him. We couldn't even show his face. We showed us just his hands, the whole thing. But then when I would fly, so the next couple of times I flew, I think I was flying to New York. So I'm sitting next to a pilot. And I was like, damn, I get to sit next to a pilot and talk about this thing I'm finding about. And he said, they send those people for their training now, when they get hired, who they freaking send in to talk to them?
Steppers.
Stupid HIMS steppers. Come and give their stupid, like they're in fucking high school or grade school. These shitheads. I mean, I'm like, this is Delta Airlines. Like, this is really baby shit. I mean, it is, but not because it's destroyed your career and how many others in every field, right? But if you do this to everybody who gets a DUI in the public out there, and then all our professionals, now you see how AA's fingers And that's why Bobby C and I, it's really bad. And it's got to stop. We got to stop it, you know?
Somehow.
It's nuts. It's just crazy. Who was else? Oh, I made a pamphlet that I wanted to hand to pilots because I was flying so much. And I had a guy who like ran from me. Maybe he thought I was setting him up, you know, like he thought maybe I was like a secret, like who would do this? And I said, hi, like, are you a pilot? I said, hi, you know, I'm doing this work and blah, blah, blah. And he goes,
Oh yeah.
Grabbed his bag and off he went down, you know. And then I talked to another guy, an American, and he knew all about it. And we had a great time talking, but it was pretty weird. Yeah. And one time I saw a guy and he was in first class. He was like acting like the flight attendant. I said to Kevin, I said, you know what? He's a pilot and he's asked to do, he's working as a flight attendant because he needs to work and they figured out it, you know, like this. So I go up into the place where they're fixing the food and everything. I say, excuse me. I said, are you a pilot? Do you know what the HIMS program is? And he went, I mean, it was just like,
wow. Yeah.
You know,
it scares the hell out of people.
Yeah. His head exploded. And I said, you know,
and the only reason I do this because I'm not working.
Yeah.
You know, if I was working, in fact, I know guys that have gotten false positives. They were just legitimate false positives, but they're kind of company guys and stuff, and they just go right back to work. They get ignored, and boy, I can't mention their names, and boy, they're afraid.
But
I've tracked them down.
What? You're making me think about a couple that just left. They said, forget it. I remember in the beginning, before you came along, there were 2 younger guys who said, forget it. We're leaving the career.
Oh yeah, if they're working, you can't.
No,
you can't.
They said,
you start speaking out, you're gonna get singled out, railroaded out. It's gonna be weaponized against you.
But we could have Scott. I could interview Scott again, and then we could, because you know his career was ruined, and wow. Well, it's been a really, really good time talking to you again, but it's just awful. But we'll just keep at it. I mean, I'm not giving up, and we're now organizing. And before it seemed like I was just doing it all alone. So we're organizing and trying to get people together and organizing the pilots together. You guys have helped each other. You know, like a couple of.
I've kept a number of people out of it.
You have.
I've helped all kinds of nurses, lawyers, and doctors and dentists. I was talking to a dentist today. He's compelled to go take a dry blood pet test, so I gave him advice on how to do it, how to download the instructions to set and make sure the person doing it does it correctly. Because done correctly, it is fairly accurate.
Right.
It's just that they ignore their own procedures.
Wow.
It's all documented. You don't have to take my word for it. It's all documented.
Okay, so you tell people we're talking to Mike Danford here, and it's been really a pleasure, you know, to become friends with you and get to know you. And we just won't stop. My husband's like, boy, you're like really passionate. I said, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just can't stop. But we're not going to stop. And
you've stayed the course. You've completely stayed the course all this time. And
it's just something. I feel like I have a responsibility because I was such a crazy stepper promoting AA for too long. Now I have to undo. I'm like Leah Remini without the fame, where she feels like this responsibility to undo what she did. But I want to tell people, so if you just, I could put it in the comments below, what to Google. And for me, if you want to contact me, I know it's a crazy email, but makeaasafer@gmail.com, or you can find me here on YouTube or on Facebook, and you can private message me. And if you want me to get in touch with other pilots, but we are really careful. They, you know, anyway.
And I think there's 2 books. There's 2 books out there.
Oh yeah, yes, go ahead. Talk about that book.
One of them is the HIMS Nightmare.
Yeah.
If you just Google the HIMS Nightmare, it'll come up. And if you go to Amazon and search for the HIMS Experiment, and that's written by, and I'm sure it's a pen name, John Nicodemus. I think that's John from the Book of John, by the way.
Oh yeah. Is it
so
new
it's
book?
a pen name.
That's new, huh? That book?
That's a new one, and it describes where likely the funding comes from, the NIAA, the National Institute of Alcoholism and something or other. It explains a lot of stuff. It's very insightful. Both of them are short reads, and the first book, the HIMS Nightmare, has ways that you'll wind up contacting me.
Okay.
I've created a website. It's not public. I mean, you know, you've got to be there by invite, and I talk to everybody personally, and it's pretty easy to tell who's legit and who's not.
Yeah. Wow.
I catch a lot of trollers, and I just don't let them in.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, just like, in fact, there was a guy who came into one of the groups in Facebook, and he was a pilot. When I followed him back to see his he was such an ass too. Like he came in, he was saying all this kind of stuff. He was real pompous. And I went, oh, you're a pilot. Ah, look at
Yeah.
you. Yeah, he's like trying to troll in, but there's none of you guys in the groups because they know that they can't be.
Yeah.
Right. It has to be separate. But we have a couple of lawyers, and it's pretty brutal what they're starting to do to the lawyers. They didn't used
Oh,
to.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've known lots
Yeah,
of.
lawyers for lawyers, it's called. Lawyers
Yeah.
for law. Well, anyway, thank you. You have a good night, and
Thank you.
let's do it again. Let's talk
Okay,
again.
sounds
All
good.
right. All right.
Good talking to you, Monica.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye. Good night, everybody. We'll see you again. We're going to just keep doing these podcasts on YouTube so we can expose it and change things. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.